Also like to say
Could you do it from the microphone? Sorry. Would you mind?
Yeah.
It's radio. I'm trying to record, so thanks.
Okay, I'd also like to say that from our point of view, the purpose of a primary election is for each political party to decide who's going to represent it in the general election. We can't do that if we're overwhelmed by other people, and that's why we prefer to have our own primary.
And sir, you were going to comment from the Green Party, or no? Or all of you can. It's fine with me.
The American Independent Party specifically decided, for the same reason that they did in Arizona, to limit participation just to American Independent Party voters. We actually have quite a number of contested races, and this will lessen by about a factor of 10 the expense of reaching those who have a choice in that primary.
Yeah, the Green Party also has this rule, and we want our voters to make an affirmative step to join the party. We're also very nervous about being rated. If we have a candidate that's working his way up in the polls, there's a real possibility that somebody could just organize a bunch of declined to state voters to go in there and vote for a lesser candidate, and that could be bought and paid for by people that are opposing Green candidates.
I asked the question, maybe you could stay if you wouldn't mind, sir. I asked the question simply because a lot of voters are saying they are disenchanted with parties. You may disagree with the polls, but the polls seem to say people don't like partisan politics. And yet, declined to state voters don't have a voice in the June primary, unless they know that they have it with the major parties. And if you could use a California example this time, not Arizona, with all due respect, that doesn't help me much.
No, I want to make a general statement about the value of political parties. I read a fascinating book recently that said that during the Civil War, the North and the South had almost identical constitutions. But there was one big difference in their election system. The North had partisan elections, and the South had nonpartisan elections. Now, you might think that was a problem for Lincoln. He had a big, active Democratic Party fighting every step of the way. They didn't want to keep the war going. They wanted to make peace. But historical analysis showed that parties helped the North. They helped to organize the government. They helped to make it more coherent. The South, every politician being nonpartisan was just for himself, and it was an interesting thought. And also I want to say, in every country in the world with a population greater than 10,000, people have organized themselves into parties. Government needs parties. We may hate them sometimes, but we need them.
I'd just like to add to that, and that is that the whole party structure, came about because of a need. And the polls, I don't think, show that people are opposed to parties per se. They're opposed to Democrats and Republicans, and they say they would like, a majority say they would like to have a third party. So that doesn't mean that they're against parties, it just means they're against specific parties.
Next question.
What about you're saying, I know some arguments have been made that this will just put more emphasis on the primary, where people will sort it out, that they'll be more apt to be active in primaries than they would, before. How would you respond to that? And that, then they filter it out, and then there's the two left.
Okay, again, Tom Noble, Carl, Vice Chairman of the California Republican Party. In Washington, the data is exactly opposite. The primary participation dropped because for a variety of reasons. So, again, they are asking Californians to completely change the manner in which they elect people, yet they have no data that shows that their assertions will work. So we are asked to just simply hope that it works out. But when it comes to voting rights, I don't want hope. I want data that shows that it actually works. They don't have that data. That's why they're into platitudes, not into data. So from our perspective, we're not going to change the system simply hoping. Point number one, they don't have that data. Point number two, in fact, parties, Democrat and Republican, will take a far greater role in choosing candidates prior to the primary, at least the ones that we would like to prefer, than they do now. So for instance, at this point, the Democrats have 6 attorney general candidates. Now, we only have 3 or 4, right? we have a chance to have, under the top two system, two Republicans on the ballot and no Democrats. What this is gonna result in is party bosses deciding, oh no, you can't have multiplicity of candidates because you could cost us a statewide race. So we are going to decide who the Democrat is that will run, so that perhaps the Republicans will have two candidates or three, we'll put up two, and we'll have the top two. So, in truth, not only does this empirically result in Washington in less voter turnout, but it's going to accentuate that because party bosses are going to be the ones deciding which candidates get involved. That's an astonishing result that they are pushing for. And in fact, like I said earlier, it's a typical government thing. See a problem, institutionalize it, make it worse. But you'll actually have less voter participation. Remember this critical fact. It is accepted that gerrymandering results in less voter participation. Well, why? Because gerrymandering is about less voter choice. You don't have a real choice. Studies show that up to a third of the state elections now will be between two Democrats and two Republicans, a different form of gerrymandering. So again, their basic claim, more people will participate. The system they're setting up will result in less people participating. So again, their claims are false, and I think they should take down the radio ads and quit misleading Californians into giving up their rights.
Can I just follow up real quick? Will you run something, ads, or I know you're out here speaking, but I mean something paid to counter those ads?
Well,
Do you have the money to do it?
We are pleased that fundraising is now starting on our side, but we have been on the internet and talk radio for the better part of a month and a half, and the initial poll on this showed that 70% of the people were open to this. That has now dropped to 50% when they're starting to take a closer look. So I am grateful for the amount of donations so far. I hope we get more, but this is certainly a grassroots effort compared to a big money effort.
And may I respond to that as well? Responding on behalf of the StopTop2.org committee, yes, we've just set it up less than a week ago, so we are currently feeling confident in raising funds, not only in California. This does affect people nationwide. If this were to pass in California during the June 8th primary, it would spiral across the nation and ultimately be not only the biggest threat to third parties and independents, but essentially the two-party system would become really one. So in any case, we do anticipate receiving funds in the near future. StopTop2.org.
So I wonder if we wanted to increase voter turnout, if that was the intention originally of this initiative, to increase voter turnout in California, wouldn't the obvious thing be to open primary elections in this state to declined state voters so that you immediately increase voter turnout for those independent voters?
There's no data that suggests that that actually happens. Look, there is reform in the works. The recent passage of Prop 11, which will reform the districts, is a step in the right direction. But again, the central issue here is they want to radically overhaul the system. But they have absolutely no data to back up that says that the medicine won't make it worse. That's what the data shows. They're just hoping it works out better. So I'm not going to trample on people's rights or suggest to Californians, why don't you just change everything? And I don't have any data that says it will. Actually, the data says it won't. But hey, let's just take a run at it. That is not leadership, and that is not wisdom. That's just taking a flyer.